you just think, how is it possible that in a rivalry game, a game that means so much, you could win a game 7-0? And from the moment until the 90th, we just stepped on their throats.
Welcome back to One-on-One for Sports Illustrated. I'm Gino Ganello, and joining me today is Sacha Kljestan, MLS Season Pass announcer. Sacha, thanks for taking the time.
No problem. How's it going?
Oh, it's good, man. I appreciate you jumping on, man. And obviously, we've got a big week coming up. And you recently released your Rivalry Week rankings yesterday, I think it was. El Trafico at number 1, Hell is Real at number 2, followed by, I believe it was Portland, Seattle, Hudson River Derby, and then the Florida Derby. Give me the background behind that. Why'd you rank him in those specific spots, and why is El Trafico at the top for you?
I guess I'll start from the top because that's the easiest. El Trafico, far and away, is the best rivalry in MLS now, and I don't think there's any comparison. The main reason is every game has been so exciting, and no matter where the teams are at in the table, the goals, right? Like every game it's averaging 4 goals per game, more than any other rivalry, I think, ever in MLS history. So, when you tune in, it's must-see TV. It's got drama. It's got iconic moments. Then you think about iconic players that have had big moments in the rivalry, mostly Carlos Vela. Then it's been Ricky Puig. Then it's been Denny Bouanga. And then the games at the Rose Bowl, in front of 82,000 fans. There's nothing like it. Hell is Real. Columbus against Cincinnati in the past few years. They've been 2 of the top teams in the East for the last 3 years. So it just makes everything mean more. The fans hate each other. Obviously, the one with the most history is Portland against Seattle. That one has been fantastic. And then at number 4, we have the Hudson River Derby, which I think has fallen off a little bit in recent years. It started really hot because you had David Villa and Frank Lampard and Andrea Pirlo going up against me and Bradley Wright-Phillips and Dax McCarty. And obviously, we had that iconic 7-0 win. The thing that's interesting about that derby is they finally met in the playoffs and the Red Bulls won. They've also met in the U.S. Open Cup, I think 3 times. The Red Bulls have won all of those. They met in the Leagues Cup knockout stage. The Red Bulls won that one. So New York City doesn't really have a signature win yet in that derby. And then the last one is a new one, Orlando against Miami, and that's just because of Messi.
Yeah, and I like how you brought up all the Red Bulls wins over New York City FC in important matches.
They're all the biggest wins. All the biggest wins in that rivalry have gone to the New York Red Bulls. Now, Listen, during that time, New York City has won an MLS Cup, so they hold that over the Red Bulls for sure.
Now, you played in an El Trafico in your career, correct? So for you on the pitch, what's the intensity like?
The fans are what make the rivalries, right? Because my first El Trafico was in the COVID year in an empty stadium, and it felt like a friendly game. You want to win the game so bad, you want to beat your crosstown rival, but when there's no fans in the stadium, it doesn't matter as much. Playing in El Trafico, the intensity is just every tackle matters, every play matters. You can't take a second off. You've got to be ready for everything, and it always seems like people step up in those moments. And then I've also got a little bitter taste in my mouth because my last ever game was an El Trafico game in the playoffs in which LAFC knocked us out and, essentially ended my career.
For sure. Now, again, you mentioned you played for the Galaxy, right? So this is not the team that we saw last year going into this El Trafico. This is not the team that won the MLS Cup final. That's obvious. What do you think has been the biggest difference this year? What do you think has been the reason for this downfall?
I think the level of a lot of the players that had very good seasons last year has just dropped a little bit. Now, if that comes down to mentality, championship hangover, not being prepared as much, resting on their laurels, all those types of things, I think have gone wrong for the Galaxy. And then you got to put a little bit of blame on Greg Vanney. He hasn't been willing to change that much. He created a bit of a goalkeeper controversy at the beginning of the season by benching John McCarthy, who won them MLS Cup, and gone with Novak Mitrovic. Then he switches back. Then he switches back again. So you also have to look at the fact that they were over salary cap and salary budget at the beginning of the season to get roster compliant. They had to trade some important pieces from the team, but they still have good enough players on the roster to be doing better than they are.
For sure. Now let's transfer over to the other coast, Inter Miami. Obviously, we've seen them be dominant at some points in the similar fashion that we've seen LA Galaxy be dominant in recent seasons. But this year, it feels like they're having a bit of struggle. The East is very, top heavy this year with a lot of really good teams in Philly, Cincy, Columbus. Is this Inter Miami team right now a title contender right now? And if not, what do they have to do to get back into that realm of, the stature?
I would say yes, they are a title contender, but they still have to do something to change it a little bit. So in the last 5 games, I think they've given up 14 goals. You're never going to win anything giving up that many goals. So the team has to be a little bit harder to play against. And I think it comes down to who he's putting on the field in his starting lineups. He's consistently gone with Cello Wygant as the right back in the biggest moments. I think Ian Frey's time has come, and he should be the starting right back. He's often paired Redondo in midfield with Sergi Busquets. I think it should be Yannick Bright. I think he gives you more legs. He gives you more bite defensively. And he's got to find a way that when Luis Suarez is not ready to play, to find a way to get more dynamic attackers on the field. So the starting lineup he played last week against Minnesota, I think, was very conservative. He went with 3 defensive midfielders, and he went with no runners up front.
Now let's transfer and move to your career, right? You've played in a lot of rivalries, a lot of rivalry matches across the different teams. You've played in El Trafico. You've played in Hudson River Derby. What is your favorite MLS rivalry moment? Do you have one that sticks out?
In MLS, it's got to be what we all called the Red Wedding, which was the 7-0 win against New York City. You just think, how is it possible that in a rivalry game, a game that means so much, you could win a game 7-0? And from the moment until the 90th, we just stepped on their throats. And for it to be away from home, also in Yankee Stadium. Listen, one of my best friends was playing for New York City at the time, and Jason Hernandez. So that one just felt good as well. And just being with the guys. I mean, this is something that is still talked about today, and that was in 2016. I think that was a really iconic moment for the New York Red Bulls.
Now, you've played abroad as well, played for Anderlecht. Then how do these rivalries compare to those abroad?
I think we're getting closer in Major League Soccer. The problem is you're going up against these rivalries, at Anderlecht. The biggest ones were against Club Brugge and Standard Liège, hated rivals that have been playing against each other for 100 years, more than 100 years. So because there's that history there's often bad blood. There's been so many games. There's been so many back and forths, teams that are competing for the title every season. But what I love about what we have in Major League Soccer is that we have, the New York Derby, the LA Derby, teams that are so close to each other. Some fans of LAFC probably used to be fans of the Galaxy. That doesn't really happen in Europe. We're growing quickly as a sport and as a league in the country. And I think these rivalries make everything better.
Now you're on air now, obviously, as we mentioned, an MLS season past announcer. Was this something you always wanted to do after your career? Was this, a path you wanted to go down? And how has it been adapting from being a professional on the pitch, answering the questions, to now the guy asking the questions?
Listen, for a long time, I thought I would be a coach when I was done playing. I started taking my coaching license while I was playing at the end of my career. And then I got presented with this opportunity to try this out, first by Fox at the 2022 World Cup, which was an amazing experience for me to cover the world's biggest stage in soccer. And then this opportunity from MLS and Apple TV to lend my voice to the league that I love. I'd be sitting at home watching all these games every weekend anyway. So the fact that I'm paid to sit in a studio and watch the games and talk about them is pretty amazing. And I work with a great cast and crew of people in the studio. I feel very fortunate to be able to tell these stories, to ask the questions. I've definitely probably lost some friends along the way for having to call them out and be a little bit critical at times. I try to be more on the positive side and explain the beauty of the game and the intricacies, but it's been really fun and I'm really enjoying this next part of my career.
And you mentioned Bradley Wright-Phillips, obviously that connection. We see it on camera, is sitting at home, your guys' connection, not only on the pitch, but now off the pitch as well. How did that relationship bud? I guess it started, I'm assuming, at the Red Bulls, and how has it grown since then? Because you guys seem to just have, a bromance of sorts almost with the way you guys, interact on television and outside as well.
Yeah, listen, BWP and I are completely different people. I think I'm on one end of the spectrum and he's on the other, but we've met in the middle to become really great friends. And obviously that was grown on the pitch. I was lucky to play with him for a couple of years because he was one of the hardest working and humble DPs in MLS. When I gave him the ball in a good spot, I know he would put it in the back of the net. So I think we both did a really good job of making each other look good and raising each other's level. And then now, after a few years of being apart, being able to reconnect off the pitch, just spend time watching soccer together every weekend, having breakfast in the hotel, every Sunday morning, things like that has been pretty fun.
Did you guys keep in touch in those times between Red Bulls and becoming, announcers for MLS Season Pass?
It was weird. There were moments where we wouldn't chat for a few months, and then there were moments where we'd bump into each other and we could hang out like no time had passed.
The U.S. Open Cup, obviously a big story this year. You, with Des Moines Menace, you guys beat Sporting Kansas City too, obviously with a lot of talented, legendary MLS players. You've told the story elsewhere, but we need to hear it here. What's the backstory behind all of this, and how did this all come together?
So the backstory is this started last year, 2024. I was just working out at the gym I work out at. The guy who owns the gym is from Iowa, played for the Des Moines Menace back in the day. He had some buddies from Des Moines in town. We all worked out together, and afterwards, the guy who was the GM of the Des Moines Menace, Charlie Bales, he said, "You look really fit, you look like you could still play. You should play with us in the Open Cup." So I said, screw it. I did it last year. I brought a couple of friends along. Fast forward to this year, I got asked to do it again. I was like, I don't know. I think we had our run. It was fun. I said, the only way I'll do it is if I get to bring all my boys along this time and bring like a real roster of MLS All-Stars. So, Ozzy Alonso works in the Spanish studio, Dax, Bradley, Benny, Fail, Hubbard, Justin Miram came and played, AJ De La Garza, Matt Hedges, a bunch of guys that have won the Open Cup before. We tried to make a good run at it. The first one was good because it was so interesting. We're so old and slow, but we've got some guile. We're smart. We're clever. We're playing against a bunch of 16 to 20-year-olds on Sporting Kansas City too, and we were able to pull out the win. So to be able to just step on the field with Dax and Bradley one more time, that was pretty cool for me personally.
Sacha, thanks so much. I appreciate you joining me. Best of luck with the broadcasting career. Hopefully we'll see you maybe on the sidelines in the U.S. Open Cup next year, but enjoy the weekend, and maybe we'll talk again soon. Thanks, Sacha.
Cheers. Thanks so much, man.